All right, let's get started. It's Sunday today. I must apologize for having to put this on a Sunday. I believe it should have been on Saturday. Right? We should have had this on Saturday. All right, just a moment, please. Right. So we are basically going to be going through the paper that I indicated there. Right. I'm just gonna reshare it again, and then we tackle a few things. Right. All right. Perfect. Let's. I'm hoping we'll be able to cover a few things today, very important things. And by the way, if anyone has question bank, right? If you have a question bank, either from MAC 3761 or MAC 3701, please just send it in either of the groups, and then just let me know if you have sent it, so that we do a slight exercise on that also. Just to clear a few things out there. Okay. All right, so let's just have a look at, let's just peruse through the kind of questions that we had on this paper in 2019. With regards to this product, prepare the manufacturing budget in units and prepare the purchases budget for that. Okay, so we'll probably come and end here, right? And then maybe, hopefully, we also do part B there, right? I actually saw this a little bit late today, but had I seen it earlier, then I would have really put it on the outline to be one of the first things that we do today, right? So variances are going to be the last things, one of the last topics for us to cover. And then take note of theory questions, right? Take note of theory questions. This is where you want to show your ability to think outside the box, right? Your ability to reason things out, right? And then from a quantitative perspective, only advise the COO whether or not to replace the cold room's current condensing units with the new condensing units, right? Ignoring, of course, time value of money and taxation. So this was just for 8 marks. So last week, I believe we assisted on this here, right? But maybe during the course of the week, I hope we make it on Wednesday. If we can make it on Wednesday, then this is what we are going to cover as well, just to make sure that this has been hammered on us, right? And then determine which of the unit selling prices will result in the highest total profit. So this here, questions like these don't really have, I would say they don't really have a format or a methodology into doing those questions. These are common sense. This is where you want to put in your own presentation, or where you can put in your own presentation. Because if you are determining which one of the unit selling prices will result in the highest total profit, you of course want to present it in a way, like we always say, in a way that's understandable, right? In a way that's understandable. But at the end of the day, remember that you are dealing with total profit. So you want to show total profits, right? You want to show and compare total profits there, right? So which means I assume now there's going to be different unit selling prices, and then maybe the unit selling prices, if they change, the unit costs are not necessarily going to change. So you want to show, or if the unit selling costs change, then you want to make the respective adjustments. But looking at the mark allocation, the 3 marks, there isn't much to do there, right? And then briefly explain what is meant by an elastic demand. Maybe the guys doing economics can also assist on that one, but that should be very easy. Again, briefly explain the difference between price skimming and penetration prices. I only did this in high school, right? But you should also have this in your earlier management modules. This one, it's just 2 marks again, right? I can't remember again. This appeared on a more recent paper, price skimming in particular. But just to give you an example of what price skimming would be, right? Since we are not going to answer some of these questions today, but price skimming is when you are going into the market, right? Let's say you are launching a new product, and if you are going to use this pricing policy, you are basically setting your price very high, right? Setting your price very high, and then later on your price is going to go down when competition comes in, right? So the main reason why you would do that, maybe you would have, say, incurred some research and development costs, and you want to recover those costs very quickly before there is competition. Or maybe you basically want to make profits, okay? You basically want to make profits before your competition comes in. So a good example of this would be a product like iPhone. These products come in very expensive. I don't know which one is coming now. Maybe it's iPhone 15. I have no idea. But I think I saw the one time on social media, people in Dubai filling up malls. There was just a stampede on those malls. People going in for the launching of that iPhone. Maybe it's iPhone 15. I can't remember too well. But you notice that these products come in very, very expensive, right? They come in very expensive, and then later the price comes down. Maybe when Samsung comes in with a similar product. Nokia is out of market now. BlackBerry is out of market now. What else is there? Maybe Huawei, when they come in with a similar product, right? Then the price has to go down now to accommodate that or to cater for the competition. So that works very much for such products, high-tech products, and products that you expect to be obsolete within a very short space of time. Maybe these are the products that go out of fashion within a very short space of time. So you might want to use price skimming. And then penetration is the opposite of price skimming. So here you come in at a very low price, and then as time goes on, you increase the price. So why would you do that? You want to penetrate the market, right? You want to penetrate the market. So you notice that there is Uber in the market, and then you want to bring in your new product, which is Bolt. So you want to bring it in as a cheaper version of Uber. And then as time goes on now, you realize that Taxify is a little bit more expensive now, right? It's a little bit more expensive than Uber in some instances, but we are really not aware of that because it came in cheaper. So in our minds, we already think it's cheaper. So, and we have already become loyal maybe to those products. So that's how price penetration works. So you enter the market cheaper, and then you gain customers, and then some of those customers are going to remain loyal even when the prices go up, right? And then state which one of the two pricing policy methods as per part 3 above is suitable for an elastic demand environment, and you provide reasons for your answer. So if the demand is elastic, then you are looking at a situation where a slight change in the price is going to result in a very big change in the quantity demanded. So obviously, the kind of products that have got an elastic demand would be products that are non-essential products, so which are luxury products. So where an increase in price can easily put off customers, you see. So which means if you have got a product like that, maybe the kind of policy that you could use there, if it's elastic, then it's price penetration there, right? It's price penetration under the assumption that price skimming, once the price is too high, this is in theory, by the way, once the price is too high, then demand is going to fall relatively larger, right? It's going to fall relatively larger. So you might want to make this work on price penetration, because in penetration, you are getting in there with a low price, attracting the market, then the price is gradually increasing, right? The price is gradually increasing. So that could work on an elastic demand environment there, right? And like I'm saying, it's theory, by the way, because if you look at products like these Apple products that I'm referring to, the demand is elastic, right? The demand, or the kind of product you would expect that the demand is elastic, given that it's a product that you can really do without. It has got substitutes in the market. So raising the price for such a product may not be a wise idea, given the circumstance, given the modules that we are doing, or given the theory that we are doing here. But like I'm saying, in practice, it may not really work like that. It might have the opposite effect, because when the price is high, this might even force people to demand that product more, right? I think they call it the snowball effect in economics. So where, because the price is high, it's an exclusive product that might cause a lot of people to demand the product in the end, merely because you think that you are going to be a few people that own the product. So that could work again. So it depends with the strategy that you are following. So that was all there on question 1. But what I intend for us to do today, and that was just an introduction, by the way, just setting in your mind on costing today. But what I intended for us to do today was a minimum transfer pricing. Minimum transfer pricing. So I believe we did this. So I want us to redo it one more time on a question that I believe we all haven't done, right? Then so it was just allowing people in there, right, on a question that we all haven't done, and then we see how we can apply. So again, does anyone have let me see if anyone, oh okay, she's in now. Does anyone have question bank? Does anyone have the question bank? Please, if you have question bank, just let me know if you have question bank. And then if you're also watching in the group and you see anyone asking to be let in, please let me know, right? Please let me know. And then if you also see someone sending in the question bank, please just let me know, because it's related to what we are doing here. Question number A, right? Question number A, assuming that PD budgeted raw materials. So you see, we haven't read through the scenario, right? You and I haven't read through the scenario, and we are coming straight to the question to see what the requirement is, right? So assuming that we are going to read through all these questions first and then see the ones that we think are easier for us to tackle. Remember, your strategy in an exam is to go for the ones that you understand most, right? And then end with the ones that you think are tricky for you, right? And then in so doing, again, you want to watch out for the mark allocation. Don't spend a lot of time on questions that have 3 marks, right? And don't come and argue with me over questions that have got 3 marks. I would rather have you leave it out totally, right? And concentrate on the ones, because you can't be happy with a question that's worth 3 marks and you have completed that question, but you fail to complete 8 marks, 9 marks, and what have you. Some of these even get up to 15, right? So in deciding which question to do, look at the mark allocation. If you think that 3 mark question you can do fairly quickly, then rush to that question and just finish it up quickly, right? Just get it off the way, assuming that you're going to be able to get 3 marks, 2 marks, 3 marks, 2 marks. Those in the end, I understand they will add up to like 20 marks or so. So we are not really ruling that out, right? but don't overthink on those questions. The reason why it's 3 marks is because you are not expected to spend a lot of time on it, right? So once you see yourself tussling on this question, wrestling and tussling on this question, just leave it and move on to the next one. What you have done, or what you could have done on that question, maybe could give you like 1.5 marks or something. So leave it the way it is and just jump to the next one. You see, sometimes doing well in an exam has much to do with your strategy, right? Has much to do with your strategy. Remember, sometimes, or in most cases as a student, you are not going to understand everything that's in this module, right? I most likely don't understand everything also that's in this module, but that will not stop me from getting a distinction, right? And that should not stop you from getting a distinction. You don't really have to understand everything. I understand most of these, or I only understood most of these when I had to teach them. But as a student as well, there were many things that I couldn't understand, right? But because of strategy now, which is the reason why I sometimes push you into doing presentations, because once you have done a presentation, you will relatively get 70% or 80% of the marks on that question that you would have assisted us through, you see. So which means once you see that question in an exam, you know that you've got your marks in the bag for that one. You see, so those are the questions that you do first. And then the ones that you start struggling with now, those are the questions where you're like, oh, okay, what did we say in class about that? Okay, I can't remember. Let me, you just put 2 and 2 together, and then you get 50% of the marks and what have you. So sometimes not even about the presentation, but just tackle the question on your own. Because once you have tackled it, believe you me, these questions are all easy in the exam. Once you have tackled the question once, maybe on the study guide, you will not get less than 50%, I guarantee you. Because no matter how difficult the question may seem to be, you are in a position to demonstrate an understanding of the subject matter, which is what is important. That's all that matters at university level. Demonstrate an understanding of the concept, right? Then you are bound to get over 50% of the marks there, right? So which means if you have failed, you would have simply shown the markers that you have not understood the principles, right? All right, so assuming PD's budgeted raw tomato demand for the harvested period ending 30 September 2019 was determined at 7,000. Determine the budgeted minimum transfer price at which FD would be willing to transfer 1 ton of raw tomatoes to PD for the harvest period ending 30 September 2019. All right, so we have done minimum transfer pricing before, right? So there are 3 kinds or 3 types of transfer prices that you can make use of. Number 1 is the minimum transfer price. And then number 2 is the cost price, which you can transfer it at cost price. And then number 3, you can transfer it at maximum price. Sorry, not maximum price. I was thinking of maximum price. You can actually transfer it at selling price. So I said maximum price because sometimes they would ask you what's the maximum price at which you can transfer FD or at which you can transfer raw tomatoes to PD, right? That will probably be 1 mark or 2 marks thereabout. So the maximum price is the selling price, right? Which is the external selling price. Why so? It does not make sense for you to sell the product at a price that is higher than the selling price, the market selling price, right? It's gonna be too expensive. So rather keep it at the market selling price. So which is the price that PD would have bought the tomatoes anyway, had they gone to Limpopo in some farm. That would be the market selling price. So you can't transfer them at a price higher than that. Otherwise, they would go and fetch them, or they should go and fetch them in Limpopo themselves, or just go to the market and fetch them there from the market, right? And then maybe you might want to look at the advantages of different types of transfer prices, right? So the advantage of the maximum price, which is the selling price, considering that these are different divisions within the organization, the maximum selling price could be regarded as fair right? In the sense that the transferring department is not losing because that's what they would have sold the price at in any case, or the product that's the price that they would have given to any other purchaser in the market. So they are not losing out. It's not a sacrifice on their part. And then also for the receiving department, you could have bought it at that price anyway, right? And then the other one was the cost price. Cost price is good because it ensures that the transferring division in this instance, which is FD, is at least able to cover their own manufacturing costs, right? So you can't, it wouldn't again make sense for you to transfer at a cost that is lower than your production cost because it means the division is making a loss, right? So how is the division going to pay salaries if it's making a loss? Because sometimes you could have a division, one division in Botswana and other division here in South Africa. So which means that other division may not be making a profit in the other country, being unable to cover all their expenses in that other country there, while the other division is benefiting here. So usually the best to use is the minimum transfer price, which not only covers the cost as you are going to see, but also covers a cost that we call the opportunity cost, which is what they could have gained yet they sold those products out or to an external party. So we are factoring that in there when we deal with minimum transfer pricing. So sometimes multinational companies or transnational companies make use of these tricks here, right, to evade taxes. So they call that corporate tax, which is 27%. Now, let's suppose it's a lot higher than Botswana. Let's suppose Botswana is taxing these at or taxing corporations at a tax rate of 16%. Right? Then you basically own two companies, and one company is in Botswana and the other company is here in South Africa. So if you want to run away from paying taxes here in South Africa, you can basically shift your profits from the company that's here in South Africa to your other company that's in Botswana, right? So we assume that you are very rich and you've got a multinational company, right? Your companies are cross-border companies. They are not just here. So what you basically do now, you want to transfer raw materials from Botswana or whatever you want to transfer, finished products from Botswana to South Africa. Right? So what you do, because the taxes are higher in South Africa, then you are going to charge a very high price from Botswana, right? So that you increase your expenses here in South Africa. So when your expenses are high in South Africa, your tax profit is going to be low. So which means what could have been taxed in South Africa is now going to be taxed in Botswana at a smaller rate. It's not allowed, by the way. You can't just do that. But these corporations have got tricks. They always have got tricks up their sleeves, right? So that's what you could do. Or sometimes pay, pay the Botswana company things like what do they call? Maybe some administrative costs. What do they normally call this? Consultation. You just do some consultation, and then you are transferring profits from one company to another. So that's profits shifting just to evade taxes. So they make use of those. So one day when you are in trouble, and then you are appearing before some commission, those are the things that they are going to be looking at, right? In terms of your business ethics, right? And why were you doing that? So if it seems like you're trying to evade tax, then you could be in trouble there. Right now, back to the question. When we were doing minimum transfer pricing, there were two things that we needed there from the previous question. So that's what you are thinking about now whenever you see a question, budgeted minimum transfer price. There are two things there. Item number one was my calculation of the incremental costs, right, which are the variable costs of production. So we normally refer to those as, all right, the question bank is in the group. Lovely. Thank you so much, Palesa. So I'm gonna go and check. Let me download that now in the meantime. All right. I'm going to open it and then show you one thing that you can do using the question bank. All right. I'm not teaching you to be a crook. I'm actually teaching you strategy, something that will help you out. So it's budgeted minimum transfer price. So there are two things. So it's the incremental cost. So the reason why I would want to call them incremental costs, of which for the most part, these are variable costs of production. Right? They are the variable costs of production. But the reason why I would specifically want to say incremental costs, because we are looking at not just the variable costs of production, but the variable costs of production that are attached to a certain decision, right? So hence we would say these are relevant costs, right? We want the relevant costs. But I think like we saw in the other question that we did where there was a, where we needed to make a quantitative decision last week, there was an issue of fixed costs, right? And then she was explaining to us that fixed costs generally are not incremental costs and they are not relevant costs, right? But then judging from the scenario that we had, we concluded that those fixed costs are the kind that would not be incurred if the product is not manufactured. So which is why I'm saying we wouldn't loosely say variable costs, because there are some fixed costs which are incremental costs. You see, so we want to take that into consideration. So an example of those would be saying, if the manufacturing of this product requires for us to incur extra rental, in other words, we might need some factory space. Factory space is a fixed cost, but it's a fixed cost that would not be incurred in this scenario if we are not going to produce that product, right? So which means in looking at the first thing here, so for the most part, it's going to be your variable costs of production, but the correct term to use would be your incremental costs of production, just in case there are some costs that would be incurred there, and some costs that would be incurred that are not necessarily variable costs. So we need to take that into consideration there, you see. So this is where principle and cramming part ways. Once you cram, you know that it's variable cost of production, because maybe every example that you have seen, it was just variable cost of production. But when you understand the principle now, then you know that in principle, I'm looking for the incremental costs, which are the costs that I would not have otherwise incurred had I not been producing this product, you see. So that's one thing that we need, incremental costs of production. And then the other thing that we would need is the lost opportunity now, which is the profit that is forfeited from the profit that we are forfeiting by transferring these internally instead of selling to an outside party. So let's just say now you are getting confused here. So what do? You can quickly go to the question bank and see, right? How do they want me to present this question anyway? That's what you are now asking yourself, right? And how do they really want me to present this question? Then you can simply open the question bank there, and then we want to search. This is transfer pricing, so you might want to search minimum. We want to see the method that they are using. Minimum transfer, right? Transfer price. So it's somewhere there. Similar to that question, you see it's 8 marks. What are we looking for here? We are looking for the method or the format, right? It's always nice if you can use formats that they use here, which I assume would be a format that's recommended. So you are not yet at the answer, so you keep searching. You keep searching, and then, okay, looks like this is where we are, right? This is where we are. Look at how beautiful this is now. Minimum transfer price in this scenario is going to be incremental cost. You see, they are putting it right. Incremental cost plus lost contribution divided by units transferred. So you see that you don't necessarily have to write this the way I write it. I prefer that you go to the question bank and look at how they are presenting their work. And then you just take an idea from what we are discussing here, because I'm basically going to show you how to get these calculations, how to get to the calculation. But in terms of the wording, in terms of the presentation, this is obviously the best presentation that you can ever get, right? This is in UNISA, of course, right? So which means what do we need to calculate? They put it right, incremental cost, and then you also want to calculate again the lost contribution. So divided by units transferred. So incremental cost divided by units transferred will give you incremental cost per unit. So most of the calculations that will basically do incremental cost per unit will basically give you your incremental cost per unit, which are most likely your variable costs per unit. Right. And then in terms of lost contribution, again, you calculate your lost contribution in total, and then you divide by the number of units transferred. So now we know what we are looking for, right? So you can then come, let's copy this, right? Let's see how this is gonna come out on our Excel sheet. So we just take that and we copy it. So which means when the marker sees you writing this kind of stuff, the marker is going to be impressed, because the marker is going to think, oh, okay, this one must have gone through their study material, you see. So you want to divide that by the units transferred. Right? Maybe, given how I'm going to do this, I could say, I could change this a little bit and say per unit plus lost contribution per unit, right? Right. That basically means the same thing. So this is how now I did it the other time, and of which you can still present it like that. Okay, let's take this in the scenario out. We don't need that. All right, so we want to calculate our minimum transfer price. So let's copy that and put it there, right? And then we know that it has got two portions, which is the incremental cost per unit, which is that one. So you can simply take it there. So it's up to you how you present this. Yeah? And then we want to add our lost contribution per unit. Right. So if you total up these two, let's say I want to total it up there. If you total up these two there, you expect that it's going to give you that, it's going to give you the solution that you want. Right. So we can put that on working number one, and then we can put that on working number two. Right. Not a problem so far, and then you can put that in brackets like that, or you can put it in borders. Right. Still, if you do not want to do this, then you can simply add there, say working one, W1, then this you can find on W2, right? So which means all that you're gonna put there is the answers that you get from there, and from there here, still the same thing, right? So you can present it basically however you want it. So let's go back to the scenario. So this here you are doing because you were confused, right? Suppose all you wanted was just the format, right? Then you can come back now. So we are dealing with the transfer, assuming that PT's budgeted raw materials demand is 7,000. So FD is the one that's transferring to PT. So let's look at the specifics now. let's go up. So we are looking for budgeted material, for budgeted information. So this is most likely not what we need, right? Leave that out, leave that out. You can see here already budgeted information. Right. So the first thing that you need is the incremental cost. Yeah. It's the incremental cost. So most of the time you're going to get these on a table like this. Yeah. Most of the time you get these on a table like this. So, all right. But before we get there, let's just peruse through and read. FD specializes in raw tomato. Does anyone want to read for us? Please. Does anybody want to read for us? So we have a different voice. Just so you don't get tired. Let me share. Right. Just so you don't get tired of listening to my voice. Somebody or anybody that wants to read this for us.
I'll read.
Thank you, CD.
FD specializes in raw tomato farming. The raw tomato market within which FD operates is not perfectly competitive. FD currently sells some of the raw tomatoes to PD at 7,500 per ton. A transfer price negotiated by the two divisions through the headquarters facilitation. The negotiated price is in a price range between the minimum transfer and the maximum transfer. Furthermore, FD has also entered into a long-term non-cancelable contract in terms of which FD must supply 9,000 tons of raw tomatoes per harvest period to the almost famous brand group, which is abbreviated as AFBG, at 7,105 per ton. Lastly, although no supply contract exists there too, FD supplies its only other external customer, Strasburger and Chips, with 1,000 tons of raw tomatoes per harvest period at 8,500 per ton.
All right. Then let's see. All right. And this one too, CD. And this part here.
Okay. FD is persistently in conflict with the environmental lobby group, the Water Affairs Department, and the DLR about, number one, excessive use of drinking water for irrigation, and number two, reluctance to use environmentally friendly pesticides. And number three, refusal to, as per the lease agreement, plant vegetation to manage soil erosion. To this end, many of the DLR officials visiting the farm have, on numerous occasions, exchanged not only heated words with the farm manager, but also some left hooks and uppercuts. But also some, left with an uppercut. In some instances, the farm manager was heard saying, "I pay an arm and a leg for this farm and the water. I'll use them as I please. Don't tell me about the soil erosion and drinking water. My business is tomato and not conservation. My motto, if you want to save water, drink tomato juice or juice sauce for all I can."
All right. Thank you so much, CD. All right. So now we are going to jump on to our calculation. So this is the other budgeted information. I don't think there's anything else there. So this is all that we need per ton. So the one thing that you therefore want to establish here is what is their unit, right? What is their unit or unit measurement? So normally you can get this on the top there, which is per ton. So which means 1 unit is 1 ton, right? Or else, and then maybe you can want to check and see the consistency there on the question. And C, determine the budgeted minimum transfer price of which FD will be willing to transfer 1 ton. So which means we are dealing with per ton, right? We are dealing with per ton. Okay. So these now, I think we need to basically take as they are, but let's just assess them one and see if they are incremental costs of production, right? So we have, or incremental costs basically, right? I believe that's what we said. We are not going to say incremental costs of production. I think last time I wrote incremental costs of production. So which means I was in error as well. It should be incremental costs because some of these may not be production costs, right? Some of these may not be production costs. So we need to be on the lookout for that. So let's assess them one. Seed and irrigation water costs. So obviously it's a cost of produce, an incremental cost, right? And then direct labor costs would obviously be an incremental cost. Pesticides would be an incremental cost. Variable overheads would be an incremental cost. And then the variable external selling costs, the fact that it's external, then we leave it out because this one we are not going to care if we are transferring internal. So we leave that one out. And then the fixed production overheads, this one because there are no stories that specifically link it to it being an incremental cost, we will therefore consider it as an irrelevant cost, right? So we are looking for the cost of manufacturing or of producing tomatoes for internal transfer. So this is why we are excluding the costs that we incur for external transfer, right? Because we are looking for the cost of internal transfer, right? So now I'm going to go to my spreadsheet there and type in the calculation. So you are not going to be able to see that now because I'm just minimizing the screen so I can type while I'm seeing. Pity on this question paper we can't copy, right? So it's seeds and irrigation, right? I'm just taking them one at a time, and then direct labor, right? Okay, direct labor costs, and then pesticides, and then variable production overheads, let's say V&O, right? And then let's say, right, variable external selling cost, let's say variable external costs, and then the other one is fixed. So because we have ruled these ones out, we just put them as blanks. Overheads, huh? Right. I know you can't see my screen, but I'm just typing what you are watching there and what you guys are looking at. Right. Let me put in the amounts. Right. So for seed, it's 1,500 per unit, and then there's 2,000. That's for direct labor, and then pesticides 1050. So we take that 1050, and then variable overheads is 1160, and then we say those ones are going to be 0 and 0. Right. Let me just show you what I've been writing. Right. This is what I'm writing here. So simply listing down those. Right. So we can as well total them up. Right. We can as well total them up there. Right. These are calculations. Right. So we say this is calculation what? Incremental cost, so calculation 1. Right. So now we've demonstrated. First of all, if you look at our wording here, that's our wording. The fact that we are writing incremental costs instead of variable manufacturing overhead, I believe this one makes a lot more sense for the reasons that I already said. So as a marker, when you are seeing this, you can already see that the student must have gone through the study material. But I think I did say in the other class that what they are normally testing you on here is whether or not you have read through the study material that they give you, which I hardly do, by the way. But it's always good if you can, like we did, you just go to the question bank and then you have a look at the wording that they use, and then also have a look at the structure that they use, and then if you can go for that structure, it would be lovely. All right, so these are the variable costs of, let's just say, in this instance, these are the variable costs of production, which are total incremental costs per unit. So if you are using this format here, then you can simply take this one as it is and then copy it there. Then if you are doing it this way, then you can simply write 5, 7, 10 there. Now you're looking for the lost contribution. Now you can put that on calculation number 2. Lost contribution. Hey, how did I type this? So many X's. Okay. Lost contribution. Right. That's on the second calculation now. So on the lost contribution, which means for starters, we want to calculate our contribution. So what's our contribution? It's the selling price, and then less total variable costs. Let's say per unit, yeah? Selling price per unit. So there's something that Steve read to us here, which is going to be very important when we are doing this. Right? So 2 things that we need there, because we are calculating lost contribution. First of all, for us to find the lost contribution, we must first find the contribution per unit, and then we can then find the lost units, so which are the sacrificed units. Right? Those are the 2 things that we need to find there. But if you look at what CD read here, FD has entered into a non-cancelable long-term contract with FD to supply 9,000 tons. So which means these 9,000 tons are totally out of question. Right? We are not going to transfer these tons. So which means this selling price of 7,105 is out of question. We don't need to regard this. Why? Because it's non-cancelable. So we are dealing with the supply that we can use, right? Or with the tomatoes that we can be able to supply internally. So which is the one that we are losing from external customers. So we are only going to consider the one where there is no supply contract, where we are supplying external customers, of which it's bakers and chips. So we are supplying bakers and chips 1,000 tons, and those 1,000 tons there are 8,500. So which means if there's anything that we can lose, we are only going to lose from 8,500 there. But let's see if it's applicable. Let's see if it's applicable. So what information again are we given? With this information of our total is 16,000, but we'll make use of this now when calculating to see if there's a sacrifice that we are making in any case. Right, so the selling price is going to be 8,500 per ton. Right, 8,500 per ton. So we can put in our 8,500 there. Right, we can put in our 8,500 there. Right, and then the contribution oh sorry, the variable cost per unit, so far we have got 5710. We know it applies there, but we left out variable external costs now. So we wanna fetch them out. Right. The variable external costs are, let me show that to you. Variable external cost, which is the variable external selling price, is only 200 per ton. So we add those two there. So plus 200, and then we arrive at 5710 plus 200. Right. Maybe because it's a deduction, let's put it as negative. No? So this is the contribution. Contribution per unit. Right, so let's look at the sacrifice units now. We want to calculate the sacrifice unit. So we need to know our budgeted capacity now. So let's look at the wording that they used. Let me go back and we check if there's any specific wording that they are using there. So we are on the lost contribution there. Right. There you go. So they are saying annual maximum manufacturing capacity. So we can take that as it is. But it would basically mean the same thing if you are saying, if you are going to write it as the budgeted capacity. So I'm simply going to copy this and put it right there. Right. I know you can't see, I'm just putting it on the other side there. Then less external market demand. Right, less external market demand. Right. And then available for internal transfer. I like it now when we're using the exact words that they are using. And then less be required for internal transfer. Right, and then what will remain is now the wheels to be sacrificed. So because we are not dealing with wheels, you can't obviously take it as it is. No? You want to put it the way in this scenario, right? Maybe you've copied it as wheels to be transferred. Because you are smart, you're going to write tomatoes to be transferred. See? All right, so now let's fill this in. Let's fill it in with our question. So on our question, total harvest for the period is 16,000 tons. So we fill that in there. All right, let's put it like this. No commas now. 16,000 tons. And then less external annual demand. So let's check it out now. What's the external annual demand? All right, so FD must supply 9,000 tons of raw tomatoes, and then they must also supply 1,000 to these ones. Right? They must also supply 1,000 to these ones. So it's going to be 9,000 plus 1,000. So if you just write 10,000, it will look like you were guessing. Eh? So let's say 9,000 plus 1,000. So this is going to give us what? 10,000. So let's put it as negative. 10,000. So we want to underline that. So what do we have available now for transfer? We have 6,000. So we can only transfer a maximum of 6,000. But what's the requirement now?
Sorry.
Yeah. Should I go back there?
Hello, sorry.
Yes, I can hear you.
You said we shouldn't use the non-cancelable contract, which is 9,000. So why do we add it now?
Yeah. Okay. We
Yes.
are not using it here for the selling price, because when we are dealing with lost contribution, we are dealing with what we can sacrifice. So in other words, the contribution that we were going to make, but we decided not to make because we are transferring internally. So the only ones that can be transferred internally is from this 1,000. So 9,000, we say it's not transferable. We are agreeing there. But at the end of the day, it forms part of our external market demand. It reduces the capacity there. So if we don't include it here, it means that we are simply saying it's available for, because remember, we want to get what is available for internal transfer. So this is not available also, right? So if we are going to sacrifice, we are only going to sacrifice from this one, from this 1,000. I don't know if I'm making sense, or someone else would want to come in and explain.
Okay.
Does anyone else want to explain what's going on here? Why we are putting in this 9,000 there? Okay, basically here we are putting in everything that is on the external demand, right? But let's complete it and then we will see once we are done with it, right? And then less what is required for internal transfer. Let's see now. How much do they want, right? They want 7,000 there. Right, so which means 7,000, we want to transfer 7,000, but we only have 6,000 available after this. So what are the tomatoes that need to be sacrificed? It's 1,000. So the question here, Palesa, is we need to sacrifice 1,000 tomatoes. Are we going to take those tomatoes from 9,000 or from that 1,000? That's where your issue comes in. We can't take them from 9,000 because we have a non-cancelable contract with these guys. So we can only take them from that 1,000. So which is why these units sacrificed on the calculation, we are applying only the contribution that we calculated there, which applies to that 1,000. But I'm going to give a different scenario shortly after this, but let's complete the calculation, right? So which means when calculating this now, let's say total contribution sacrificed, contribution, right? So this should therefore be the 1,000 units that we need to sacrifice now, which is what we got on that calculation. So remember, we had a spare capacity, right? After all this external demand, we had a spare capacity of 6,000, but we wanted 7,000. So if we wanted 6,000, there wouldn't be any sacrifice that we had to make because we have got a spare capacity, which is a spare manufacturing capacity. But we don't have 6,000. Oh, sorry, we don't need 6,000, though we have 6,000. We actually need 7,000. So which means this 1,000 must be sacrificed from our external customers. So we need to take away from our external customers in order to supply our other division internally. So what contribution could we have been making? So which means we would have been making 1,000 times 2,590. So 2,590. So if we multiply those two now, what are we going to get? Let's see. So here we are simply 1,000 times 2,590. Right. This is what we are sacrificing. Right. This is basically what we are sacrificing in terms of totals. But because we want it per unit, right? And then if you look especially on the one that I've written here, we're saying per unit transferred, right? Per unit transferred. So which means you are dealing with the units that we are going to transfer them at. So you can then write okay, units transferred. Okay, it should be double R, units transferred. These ones are 7,000. So these are the units that we want, right? These are the units that we want, or that the other department requires. So what we need now is therefore, right, I see there's a message coming in there. Oh, it is going out. Okay, no, you will catch the recording. I'll make sure it's available soon. So now we need total contribution of sacrificed per unit, right? So we can simply write it in short, contribution per unit. Maybe if you are going to be handwriting, it's going to be a lot easier for you to write these things in full and just tired of typing this. But in full, you would simply write total contribution sacrificed per unit, right? So which is, you can show the calculation there, 2,590 divided by 7,000. Okay, you can simply want to show that there, divided by that, right? That's simply 370.00. So where do you take that to? If you are using this method, you can simply bring it over here, plus 370, and then you add those two, right? So that's let's see what it is. Okay, I think we can put it there, né? We'll get the answer from that. So we copy that there. So this is that plus that there. So that's the answer that you would get there, 608. We are done. Right, so any questions before I slightly change the scenario? I want to change the scenario and accommodate what Palesa was saying. Just to accommodate what Palesa was saying. Just out of interest, are we all on the same page? So here, you choose between these two, right? I will most likely do it this way because I'm on Excel here. It's a lot easier for me to present it like this. But if you're handwriting, for instance, you don't really have to do it this way. You can simply put it up like this. You are showing that these are your incremental costs on working number 1. You come down to working number 1, there's consistency. Working number 2, 370, you follow it down. So you basically won't have this part here, right? You would simply have these two here. All right. So I'm going to change the scenario here a little bit. So because I'm going to share this after, so let me not mess it up. Let me just copy it here and put it on the next page, and then we change the scenario there. All right, let's say this is what we have written. Now I want us to change the scenario a little bit. Let's say the question read instead, let's say this issue wasn't an issue. Right? Let's just say this issue wasn't an issue. Let's just say FD is supplying, who is it supplying? Let's see, FD is supplying to Almost Famous brand, these ones. They are supplying them 9,000 tons, but they don't have a fixed contract. They don't have a non-cancelable contract. Let's just say this contract and that contract is the same. They are both cancelable. So which means these 9,000 units would be available for internal transfer as well. So we would have them as an option. So what you could do now in this situation, you can therefore analyze the prices, right? So which means we have got a contract with Beggars and Chips where we can sell this at 8.5, and then we have a contract with almost famous brand groups where we are selling these at 7,105. And then we know that we need to sacrifice, based on our calculations, we need to sacrifice 1,000 units. So which ones would you sacrifice here between these two, supposing that the contract is cancelled? So you'd rather cancel the one where you are having to sell at a lower price and keep this one because you make more on this one. So which means the adjustment that you would make on that one is on the selling price. But in practice, again, I must emphasize that there are other factors that you might take into consideration. For instance, based on contributions alone, you might want to sacrifice the one that gives you less contribution, which is the one that has a selling price of 7,105, and then you keep the one that has a selling price of 8,500. But take into consideration now that with these ones, they are giving you an order of 9,000, right? And then these ones are giving you an order of only 1,000. So suppose you sacrifice 1,000 from out of this 9,000, you might drive this customer away, right? They might end up going to another supplier instead of you see. So you are taking those things into consideration now, that if I reduce my supply here by 1,000, what's the effect in terms of our client relations with these people? Are they not going to? I think if you guys have been following the news, what's happening? China had a contract with Germany, where Germany was supposed to supply them with cars, right, automobiles, with about $1 billion worth of cars. Supply China $1 billion worth of cars. But because Germany decided to be aligned with the US over the past week, China decided to cancel the whole contract. You see, some of the things that we experience in real life. So which means before canceling this contract, or before reducing their numbers to from 9,000 to 8,000, you want to consider a situation where what if you reduce them to 8,000, they basically cancel the whole contract, and then you are only supplying 1,000, and these ones can't take more than 1,000. So you want to consider all those things. But suppose none of those things are issues, then you shift from that 8,500, you sacrifice the cheaper one, which is 7,105 there. So you come down to your calculation there. Instead of 8,500, you go to your 7,105, right? You basically got your 7,105. So let's adjust that to 7,105. So you see now there's a difference on the contribution. So which means the amounts that we're going to be using for our contribution are going to be slightly different there. So which means instead of 295, now we've got 195. We've got that. So it has already been adjusted there, right? So which means this is gonna be, so the total unit sacrifice now, it's going to be 1,000 times 1195. So that would give us something totally different. The units transferred are still the same. Contribution, so now it's going to be total contribution of 95,123, right? So which means it's 170.71 on that one. So you take that amount and you put it there. You see now there's a slight difference there. There's a slight difference. So this is going to be 170.71, and then this is going to be, this is not even a slight difference, it's a big difference, 880.71. So that's the difference now if we didn't have a cancelable contract. Right? If we didn't have a non-cancelable contract. So in other words, if we could vary our units with both suppliers, then you might want to sacrifice the one that's giving you less contribution so that your sacrifice is more. Right. So now you can see that 588 something is different from the one that we had. It's slightly less than this one here, which is 6,008. Right, I hope you are answered. So we are sticking to this one. So this is what we are keeping on the solution based on the scenario. Right, so if we don't have any questions now on this, I believe we are sorted on this one. So we'll jump back to question 1. We'll jump back to question 1. We started at 9, right? Right, I'm hoping by 11 we are done. I don't want to
So,
take much of you.
Mr. Zulu. So on loss contribution, we sacrifice for
We are here. So on loss contribution, we are only sacrificing.
We are sacrificing the 7.
We are transferring 7,000, sacrificing 1,000. Let me take you there again on this one. So here we are. So we are sacrificing 1,000, right?
Mm,
And then we are
yes.
transferring 7,000 because they want 7,000.
Okay.
So which means part of this whole 7,000 that is being transferred, 6,000 is not a sacrifice, remember, because we already have capacity for that, an extra capacity for that. It's only this 1,000 that we need to take from either this 1,000 or that 9,000. So because that 9,000 is a non-cancelable contract, we can only take from 1,000. Right? Suppose they required 8,000 units. So we'll be in trouble now if they required 8,000 units, because given this scenario now and with the non-cancelable contract of 9,000, then we would not be able to fulfill that whole contract. So we'll still only take 1,000, and then the external department would have to at least buy from an external, the internal department would have to at least buy from an external supplier, because we have a contract that we can't cancel here, right? So that makes a big difference.
And I'm lost.
Right, take us through, and then we see where you are lost. Maybe
Okay,
let's
so
start from
if we didn't have the non-cancelable contract, we're going to sacrifice the 7,000 something.
No. We are not sacrificing 7,000. Remember. So let's go through.
If we didn't have the non-cancelable.
Yes. Let's say we didn't have a non-cancel. The calculation here would be the same still. What would differ is on the contribution.
Yes, the
let's
loss
start.
contributing. On the loss contribution, we're going to sacrifice the 7,000.
Well, let's see if we're going to sacrifice, yes, this one here.
Yes.
Yes, that's the one that. And why? You remember why we said we would sacrifice this one?
Yes, I do.
Because it's smaller. You don't want to sacrifice something big.
Yes. Okay, now I understand.
All right. Right. So still on this question now, on question 2. Right. So from PD's performance measurement perspective, briefly comment on the fairness of the current negotiated purchase price in comparison to the budgeted minimum transfer price as per your calculation here. So let's see what the current is, and then we come. All right. So we want to see the current, what you call this, the current transfer price. Right. We read it somewhere. All right, there you go. FG currently sells some of its raw materials to PD at 7,500. So let's see now. Let's comment on the fairness of that. So 7,500. Let's have a look at that in relation to our calculation here. Right. So the transfer price, the minimum transfer price will be 608, right? And then they are transferring this at 7,500. So is it fair or not? Let's see fair to whom. Let's see fair to whom. First of all, on the question, PD, comment on the fairness of this in comparison to the budgeted minimum transfer price. So from PD, so we're looking at this from PD's perspective. So who's PD? So PD is the receiving department. Right? So PD is receiving this at 7,500. Right? Where is that one there? Is receiving this at 7,500. So let's assess them all. So PD is receiving this at 7,500 per ton. They could have been receiving it less as per our calculation at 6,000 something. The one that we calculated, we checked that one out. And then this is the external price, 7,105, then 8,500. So it's somewhere in between these two, right? So because we're looking at this in the context of our calculation, 7,500 versus 6,008, 7,500 is much more than what they could have been getting it for if the minimum transfer price is used. So this would be unfair, right? This would be unfair to the extent that based on the performance measurement where they are using the return on investment, this one, it basically means that their return on investment could be less as a result of this amount, 7,500 used instead of the 6,500 that is used. So in that regard, then it's unfair for them, right? Considering that the minimum transfer price compensates the transferring division for the lost contribution. So it's a little bit unfair. And then again, you can add to say, if you consider that FD has a contract with AFBG where it's even supplying that at less than that price. It's like if you have a relative and then your relative wants to sell you something at this price, 7,500, but they are selling the same thing to someone else who isn't a relative at 7,105. Is that fair? It's not fair, right? It's not really fair. So given these circumstances, then you can conclude that it's not a fair amount. So which means you can put your own English there, right? You can put your own English there, but it's only 3 marks. Identify and briefly discuss 3 social, ethical, and environmental concerns as evident from FDI's operations that could potentially harm M&M business reputation and negatively affect their continued existence. So this is what CD was reading. Right? You remember that part? Where was it again? Remember where they said they were trading blows, left hooks, and uppercuts. This is where you get your information there. Right. So these are the issues. Right? These are the issues. So there are excessive use of water. So the issue with excessive use of drinking water for irrigation, this is not just water, but it's drinking water. Right. So if you're like me, you may argue that there is no shortage of water on Earth. I don't believe there is shortage of water on Earth. We are like 70% water on this Earth. So there really isn't a shortage of water, but usable water now could be scarce. And drinking water in particular, because you are fighting this lobby group here, right? Water Affairs Department. So it's like fighting with rainwater. So they are aware of how much drinking water is available. So drinking water is treated. So they take, I think most of the water that we consume in Gauteng, I believe it's from somewhere in the Vaal there. So they take that water and treat it. You should see how that water looks like, by the way. You wouldn't drink it. if you knew how the water looks like. But we have faith that they put in chemicals, and then once they put in chemicals, then the water is used. But you can't obviously excessively use that water for irrigation. So if you live in these, what do they call them? These high market areas, most of the water that you use for irrigation, there is borehole water, right? Especially maybe if you are wealthy and you live somewhere in the capital in Pretoria or somewhere in, say, in Cape Town. Yeah. Most of the water that you would use to irrigate your plants, to irrigate your lawns and stuff, is borehole water for your swimming pool. That's most likely borehole water. You're not going to use drinking water there. Right? Maybe the bill, you could handle the bill, but maybe you might have issues with rainwater, right? And then your reluctance again, or their reluctance to use environmentally friendly pesticides. These pesticides, by the way, all of them are unfriendly, but they are not going to tell us that. Nobody's going to tell us the truth. They are all unfriendly to our system, but to different degrees, right? It might not harm you today, but it's definitely going to weaken your system. So next time you buy your fruits and your vegetables, wash them with vinegar, right? Because they've got these pesticides on them. When they grow them, wherever they grow them, they spray them these pesticides. So you might want to clean it with vinegar, I believe, right? And you will see, you will tell me what you see there. So maybe some of you are vegan, right? You're only consuming tomatoes and vegetables. It might kill you faster than the people that eat meat. Like it might kill you faster than pork chops because of these pesticides. Right? So clean them up before you consume them. But what's the effect of this here in relation to our question? So our question is, what could affect the sustainability of this business, obviously, in the long run? So if we all become a woke generation and we decide that we are boycotting these commodities, then who are they going to sell their stupid tomatoes to? So they are going to be in trouble now, these guys. So at least if they are using pesticides, they must use environmentally friendly pesticides. So now this is not just about you, but the environment, right? Sometimes they are not just bad for you, but the environment as well, right? It might be bad for environment, which is the animals, flora and fauna, that's what they call it. So it might be bad. So excessive drinking water and unfriendly pesticides, when you're putting yourself now at loggerheads with these lobby groups, they might even go up in parliament now and pass laws against your company. See? And then the refusal to, as per this agreement, to plant vegetation to manage soil erosion. So soil erosion in itself is bad for your farm, right? In terms of the sustainability. So if you keep losing soil erosion is the loss of topsoil. So topsoil is the one where we do our farming, right? We farm on the topsoil. So if that topsoil is eroded and you keep going down, the land that you find there or the soil that you find there is not good for planting or for growing your crops, right? It's either rocky or it's just plain not arid, right? So you can't use that land there. So which is why, as a good farmer, you want to plant vegetation. Maybe when you're planting vegetation, the roots actually hold the soil together. So when it rains or when you do irrigation, that soil is not washed away, right? Which is the topsoil that you need, right? And then again, these officials visited the farm, and then you were exchanging heated words. So you were not negotiating with these people, but you were exchanging heated words. It would be better if you were making promises, showing your concern, but you wanted to, trading some hooks and uppercuts with these guys. So that's a lot of trouble for you there, you see, as a company. So those are the things that you are looking at there. All right, and then for question C only, ignore the losses on PT. So calculate the budgeted optimal allocation of the available tomatoes in kilograms per product type. So next time we are going to start off on this one. So this basically, once you see a budgeted optimal allocation of available, this word available must stick in your mind scarcity. Right? When you think of scarcity, you know that there is a limiting factor. So limiting factor in your mind now, you think you need to calculate your contributions for different products that you are producing, right? And then from there on, do your contribution per limiting factor, and then you rank them, and then decide which one are you going to produce first, which one are you going to produce last. That's what we are doing there. So if you have run out of time, then you quickly want to put in that format contribution and then contribution per limiting factor, which is C, at least to show the markers that if you had enough time, you're going to do the right thing. All right, so C and D, where we are dealing with the quantity statements, there we are going to do on the next session, hopefully on Wednesday. And then, by the way, if you are doing MAC 3761 and maybe 3701, just do check for me. Process costing is still in our syllabus. Right. All right, let's quickly do 1. We are close to 11 now. Let's quickly do 1. Right, with regards to this one here, prepare the manufacturing budget. Right, the manufacturing budget in units. All right, so let's see what we would do there. BIL, I believe S. Right. Let's check out that information now. All right, so the total sales demand for the financial period. Okay, again, let's check and see what the question specifically says. So prepare that in units. Right, so we want to prepare that budgeted production statement in units. So in order for us to decide or to budget our production, we need to decide on our sales, right? What we want to sell. So the budgeted sales units are 500,000 in the ratio of 2:3. Right? So we are only dealing with this one here. All right. Let's see now if there are any opening stocks and closing stocks or inventories, as they say. Right. I don't see anything on top there. All right, let's see. Let's go down. There we go. Right, so closing finished inventory units is 7,000 for that one, and then 9,000 for SAM, and then opening inventory is 3,000 and then 15,000. So that's all that we need there. Right. So let me put the calculation there. So let me see, what do they call it again? They call it budgeted, right? Manufacturing budget in units. So we'll call it the same. Manufacturing budget in units. These things, by the way, they can be called different names, but it's nice if you can call it what they call it there. So manufacturing budget in units. And then, of course, if you can spell it correctly, please spell it correctly. Right. Manufacturing budget in units. So let's say budgeted sales. Budgeted sales. Remember the trick again. If you have no idea what you're doing, go to the question bank and look at the format. Right. Then you know that you're looking for your budgeted sales, right? And then from your budgeted sales, I believe you want to see what your closing inventory is. Right. I haven't checked this, but this is something that I remember. And then you want to deduct, or let's say 8 there, right? And then less opening inventory. Here are my spellings. It's almost 11, so I'm tired. Right. All right, so I normally do this so that I'm able to read these numbers that I type here. All right, so to our budgeted sales. So with sales is what we are going to give away, right? So remember what we are looking for. We are looking for what we should manufacture, right? So part of what we should manufacture, we should sell. And then part of what we manufacture, again, we should remain with as closing inventory. And then part of what was the opening inventory, we do not manufacture because it was there already. So we only manufacture what we didn't have. So we had opening inventory, so that's why it's being deducted there, because we are not manufacturing. So here we get our budgeted units. Manufacturing units. So that's what we get there. I can't remember now where I hit that amount, right? Where I put in the amount. So let's see now. We are simply putting that in there. So budgeted total sales for the financial year is 500,000. So of which they are divided or allocated in this ratio 2:3. So if it's 2:3, ours is 2. The one that we're dealing with is 2. So let's do the calculation. This is gonna be 500,000 times. So it's a ratio of 2:3. So it's gonna be 2 divided by 2 plus 3, which is 5. This is what we do. So this should give us something like 200,000. Okay, so it's not here. I hope it's here. 200. Right, this is where it is. So this is in units. And then closing inventory. What was our closing inventory? Our closing inventory was 7,000 units and the opening is 3,000. So we put it in likewise, 7,000 minus 3,000, and then we do a summation of all those amounts. So this is our budgeted production right there. All right, and then let's see what else is there. Prepare the budgeted sales, the purchase budget for the ingredients of biltong only. So let's look at biltong. Right, this is the budgeted information there. Direct material. So this is where the biltong is. Right, so biltong is, there we go, 120 grams at 18 there. And that's what we have. And then the difference between SM input is as a result of that. And then the budgeted opening and the closing inventory for biltong is 100 and then 50 respectively. Right, so let's deal with the sales budget. So in terms of, so it's not a sales budget, it's a purchases budget. So it's rightly called a raw materials purchases budget. So again, if you are lost, go to the study guide, right, or go to that book there and then see how they present it. So I can basically present it in a way that's similar to this, because I'm looking for the materials that we need to purchase, right? So how do I get them? How do I get them? We basically need the materials that we need to manufacture, right? So which is going to be the required biltong. So how do we get the required biltong? So per unit, it requires 120 grams. So how many units do we need? So which is the number of units that we will manufacture. So we are basically taking our solution from the top one there. Right, so which is going to be, let's say, units required, or right, we can even put it as units required. So where are these units required? They are required in the manufacturing processes because this is a raw material. So this raw material comes in where? Here to our budgeted manufacturing. So it's gonna be 204 units that we want to manufacture times. Let's see how much we need. So we need 120 grams. We basically need 120 grams per. Okay, well, they already said 1 unit is 500 grams. Sorry, I had not read this. So we need to make an adjustment there. So which means, therefore, the biltong that is needed there, again, we can simply put it as 500 grams, right? Then we'll make an adjustment later. So it's gonna be 500 grams per unit. I almost lost it there. So 500 grams is how many kgs? 0.5. So that would be 500 grams divided by 1000, right? 0.5. So which means the number of kgs that we need here now, it's only 4 marks. So there's totally no thinking that you need to do there. So it's going to be 204, 123 times the answer you get there is 0.5, right? Let's right. So it's 120 kgs that we require in our manufacturing process there for us to produce 204 units. Given that each unit requires 500 grams, we would basically need 120 kgs to fulfill our manufacturing desires, right? And then we will also require a closing inventory, right? Budgeted closing inventory is 50 kgs, so we'll require closing inventory of 50 kgs. So which means we can add closing inventory.
Sorry, sir, for disturbance. Is it 120,000 or 102,000?
Maybe you are right. I suspect that you are right. I can already see here I made a mistake. Thank you for that. Let me adjust that. Yes, 102,000. Very
Thank
impressive.
you.
Thanks a lot also.
Okay.
All right. And then the closing inventory is 50, and then the opening is 100. So we are going to need a closing inventory of 50, right? Which is 50 watts, 50, let's say again, 50 kgs. And then the closing there is going to be 100 kgs. So the closing is 50, and then the opening is 100, right? So we're going to take that as it is there, but we want that negative, right? Oops, negative 100, right? Units, or you can say kgs to be purchased. Units to be purchased. So a quantities purchases budget would just be this. This is where we would end on the quantities budget. But because they want it in rands, I believe, let's see what the question says. I think they want it in rands. So prepare the purchases budget. So it will have to be in rands if they just say purchases budget, because you're looking at how much you are going to spend. So far we know what we are going to purchase, how much we are going to purchase. Now we need the price of that. So 120 grams is 18 rand. Right? 120 grams is 18 rand. So how much would a kg be? So a kg would be 120 divided by 1,000 and then times 18. Right. Budgeted purchases therefore would be 101,950 times. So we said each gram, per 120 grams, it's basically 18 rand, but we want per kg because those figures are in kgs there. So we want to see how much it would cost us per kg. So it's 120 divided by 1000 times 18. So that should be 120 divided by 1000, and then we're multiplying that by 18. So if you like, you can find the price per gram, right? You can basically find the price per gram, and then you multiply by 101,950 times 1000 grams, since that's in kgs. But that might be a little bit complicated. I think it's a little bit easier this way. Right, so here, 120 divided by 1000 basically gives us how many kgs 120 is. Right, basically gives us how many kgs 120 is. But again, this is not the end of it. This is not the end of it, because if you realize it here, right, if you realize it here, if you want to find the price per kg, sorry, per gram, you would have to divide by 120. I think let's just simplify it, right? Let me not complicate this, right? Because if I was going to complicate this, this has to be divided by 120 there to get how many 120s there are in that there. But that would be unnecessary, I believe. So what we could do, we could find the price per gram, right? We could find the price per gram, of which we know 18 is the price of 120 grams. So we divide by that, right? And then we convert those grams per kg, so which will be divided times 1/1000. I think that would be simpler that way. That would be a better arrangement in terms of explaining. So this here is in kgs. So we want to convert this into per kg. So we start off by dividing 18 by 120 so that we find the price per gram, and then we convert the price per gram to a price per kg by dividing by 1000 or multiplying by 1/1000. So this is going to be 101,950 plus 18 divided by 120 times, 18 divided by 120 times 1 divided by 1000. So this is it. So this is basically what we are going to spend there. Looks funny though, this amount. It looks very much fun. But I guess it is. Let's see, let's run it through again. So that's the price per gram. Oh, sorry, we are supposed to multiply, ne? Sorry, we are supposed to multiply. Hence, it's looking fine. Sorry about that. On this part here, we are getting per gram. So if we want to convert grams into kgs, then we are supposed to multiply, sorry, not divide. My bad. So we are supposed to do it this way. Right, this is making a lot more sense now. 15,292,500. All right, we are 2 minutes into our closing time. I do not know if we have any questions. All right, so I'm gonna print this out and then put it in the groups there. And then in your spare time, you can work on it and compare the solutions. If there's anything that you do not understand, then you can simply ask. You can simply ask, right? So what paper is this? This is 2019 what? Let's see. 2019-10. NEC 3701. Okay. Let me first mix up these two. Right. We want this one here. So please use this with the video so that you can see what question, or maybe we should simply write it there. This is question, okay, this is question 1A, and then this was question 2A, I believe. Right, let's see question 2 what, just so we are sure. That's question 2A. All right, question 2A. So I'm gonna print this now. Right, let's say this is minimum transfer price. Oops, what am I typing? My minimum transfer price. Okay, it's fine as it is. Right, we said this is MEC 3701 10 2019. 10 2019. Right. All right, so I'm gonna see you guys on Wednesday. Bye and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.